I always believed that having a twin meant never truly being alone. From the moment we were born, my brother and I shared everything: our childhood secrets, our victories, and even our silent fears. He was my mirror in more ways than one, not just in appearance, but in how we moved through the world. People often said we were inseparable, and for most of my life, I believed that was true. Growing up, our parents often marveled at how we understood each other without words. A glance was enough to convey an entire conversation. We played the same sports, excelled in the same subjects, and even shared the same group of friends. If someone tried to come between us, we pushed them out, always choosing each other first. There was comfort in that certainty, until the day it shattered. I met her in the most ordinary way, through a mutual friend at a casual gathering. She wasn't the kind of girl who demanded attention, but there was something about her, something quiet yet undeniable. Maybe it was the way she listened, fully present, or the way she laughed, not loud, but sincere. From the start, I knew she was different. And for the first time, I wanted something for myself, something that didn't belong to both of us. My brother seemed happy for me. He asked questions about her, teasing me in the way only he could. "I never thought I'd see the day," he'd joked, nudging me with his elbow. It felt natural, easy, like all the other moments we had shared. But looking back, there were signs I missed. The way his smile lingered too long when she was near, how his questions about her grew more frequent, more specific. Still, I ignored them. I had no reason to doubt him. After all, he was my brother. Things started changing in small, almost imperceptible ways. She became distant, her once instant replies taking longer, her laughter softer when we were together. At first, I blamed myself, thinking I had done something wrong. But then, there were moments, passing glimpses between them, hushed conversations that ended when I walked into the room. My brother, who once stood beside me in everything, was suddenly a step ahead, reaching for something that wasn't his to take. The night everything changed was just like any other. We were alone, just the two of us, as we had been 1,000 times before. But this time, the silence between us felt different. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize him. I asked the question I had been too afraid to say aloud. And when he answered, my world tilted. This section sets up the deep connection between the protagonist and his twin, introduces the love interest, and subtly builds tension leading into the betrayal. Would you like any refinements? I should have seen it coming. The moments of hesitation, the lingering glances, the way she pulled away from my touch as if I had become a stranger. I had convinced myself it was nothing, just my own insecurity twisting harmless interactions into something darker. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply you try to bury it. It started subtly, missed calls, messages left unanswered for hours. When I asked if something was wrong, she would smile, but it never reached her eyes. "Just tired," she'd say, yet her energy was never drained when she spoke to him. My brother, my other half, the one person I had trusted without hesitation. He was always there, offering her comfort, making her laugh in ways I no longer could. The realization didn't come in a dramatic moment of discovery. There was no single text message, no whispered confession behind closed doors. It was a slow, suffocating unraveling. I noticed how they stood too close when they thought I wasn't looking, how their conversations carried a weight I wasn't meant to hear. She was slipping away from me, and he was the one catching her. One evening, I found them together alone, their voices hushed. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something unspoken. When they noticed me, she took a step back, guilt flashing across her face. My brother, on the other hand, held my gaze unflinching. It was in that moment that I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. I wanted to lash out, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. What would I even ask? How long had this been happening? Had either of them ever really cared about me? Instead, I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing in the silence they left behind. That night, my brother came to my room. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Then explain it to me." He hesitated, and that was all the confirmation I needed. If there had been nothing to hide, the words would have come easily. But he said nothing, just stared at me with something I couldn't name. Guilt, regret, or maybe just the realization that our bond was no longer unbreakable. I had always believed that no matter what happened, we would choose each other. That at the end of everything, it would be us against the world. But standing there, looking at the stranger who shared my face, I understood that some betrayals cut too deep to heal. I didn't need to hear his excuses. I already knew the truth. And for the first time in my life, I felt Trull alone delivering an emotional gut punch while setting up the next stage of the story. Would you like any refinements? The days blurred into one another, each moment heavy with the weight of betrayal. I had spent my entire life believing that no matter what happened, my brother would always be by my side. Now, I struggled to reconcile the person I had known with the one who had stolen something irreplaceable from me. I avoided him. I avoided her. It wasn't difficult. Whenever I entered a room, they both fell silent, guilt thick in the air between us. My phone buzzed constantly with their messages, each one left unanswered. What could they possibly say? That they hadn't meant to hurt me? That they hadn't planned for this to happen? Intent didn't matter when the damage had already been done. At night, sleep became an impossible thing. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, searching for the exact point when everything changed. Had it started with a glance? A stolen conversation? Or had it always been there, waiting for me to look closely enough to see it? The silence between my brother and me stretched, a chasm neither of us dared to cross. He tried once, stood outside my door, knocking hesitantly like a stranger instead of the person who had been a part of me since birth. "Please," he said softly. "Just talk to me." I stayed where I was, heart pounding, hands clenched into fists. Part of me wanted to open that door, to scream, to demand an explanation that would somehow make sense of the mess he had created. But I knew the truth. Nothing he said would change what had happened. Nothing would make me forget the betrayal carved into my chest like a wound that refused to close. She reached out, too. A text, simple and weak. "I never wanted to hurt you." I stared at the words, feeling nothing but emptiness. Once, she had been the person I thought I could build something real with. Now, she was just another name in my phone, another reminder of how easily love could turn to ash. As the days passed, the sharp edges of my grief dulled into something quieter, heavier. The house that had once been filled with laughter now felt unbearably small, suffocating with memories I wanted to erase. I needed space. I needed to breathe. So I packed a bag. When my brother saw me at the door, his expression crumbled. "You don't have to do this," he said, desperation laced in his voice. I met his gaze, my own unreadable. "Yes, I do." For the first time, I wasn't running from the pain. I was choosing to leave it behind. And as I stepped outside, into the cold air of a world that suddenly felt too big, I realized something. I had always believed my twin and I were one. But maybe, just maybe, I was finally learning how to be whole on my own. This section deepens the emotional weight of the betrayal while pushing the protagonist toward a decision. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. The city was quieter at dawn. I walked aimlessly, my breath visible in the crisp morning air, the weight of my past trailing behind me like a shadow. I had left without a destination, seeking only distance from him, from her, from the memories that had once felt like home. But no matter how far I went, the ache remained, settled deep in my chest like an unspoken farewell. I found a small cafe on the corner of an unfamiliar street, the kind of place where no one knew my name. The bell above the door chimed softly as I stepped inside, the scent of coffee and fresh bread momentarily easing the tension in my shoulders. I ordered something warm, sat by the window, and watched the world move on without me. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. I didn't check my phone. I knew the messages were there, pleas from my brother, apologies from her, but none of them mattered anymore. Words wouldn't undo what had been done. I had spent too much time searching for answers that would never come, for explanations that wouldn't make the betrayal hurt any less. The truth was simple. They had made a choice, and so had I. A part of me had expected to feel empty without them, but instead, there was something else, a quiet, unfamiliar strength. I had spent my whole life defining myself by the people around me. My brother had always been my anchor, my reflection, my constant. Losing him had felt like losing a part of myself. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe I had simply mistaken his presence for my own identity. I thought about the boy I had been before all of this. The one who had believed in loyalty, in love, in the unshakable bond between brothers. That boy was gone now, but in his place stood someone new. Someone who understood that trust, once broken, could never be pieced back together the same way. Finishing my coffee, I stood, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. When I stepped outside, the air smelled of rain, fresh and full of possibility. I didn't know where I was going next, but for the first time, That didn't scare me. I had walked away from the past, and now it was time to step into the future. Some wounds never fully heal. Some betrayals linger like scars, faint but permanent. But scars are proof of survival, of lessons learned, of strength found in the ruins of what once was. I wasn't the same person who had trusted too easily, who had believed in forever without question. I was something different now, something stronger. And as I disappeared into the rhythm of the city, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't running anymore. I was finally protagonist stronger, but forever changed. Let me know if you'd like any refinements.